Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Pagan's Witchy Corner. My name is Pagan, and I am joined by a longtime familiar guest, or pair of guests, I should say, that haven't been on the show for a little bit, but welcome back to the Spirit World Center, Eric and Laova. I'm so glad you guys are back, and it's been such a long time, and I'm so happy that we get to connect again and catch up. So, how are you guys?
Thank you so much for having us. We are doing great. It's been a very busy summer. We've been expanding what we do at the center and otherwise just really doing a lot of expansive spiritual practices in our own lives. And I gotta say, this has been an excellent year.
That is awesome. It seems to be a really productive year for a lot of folks, which I'm really thankful for. Unlike some of the previous years that we've had that were not so productive due to, global catastrophes. Um, but also speaking about catastrophes, y'all are in Canada. Are you guys okay with the wildfires up there?
Yes, we are. It's
Okay.
it was wild for a while. We never got any of the wildfires really close to us.
Okay.
We were always a ways away, but yeah, the smoke was very present. I remember one morning where I went out there at like 10 a.m. and see the sun, and it's high above the horizon, but it looked like the moon, but just a reddish moon. Like it was, you could stare at the sun. I'm
Oh
not
my
advocating staring
gosh.
at the sun, people, be careful.
Yeah,
But
don't do that.
you could literally, like, I literally just watched the sun for like 2 minutes, and it was just so eerie and mesmerizing. Yeah, it is. So there's a lot of beauty mixed with the horrors of those wildfires. But yeah, everyone that we know is safe, thankfully.
I'm glad. I'm really glad to hear that. I do worry about my Canadian friends with hearing about them, especially with all the smoke we got all the way down here in Tennessee. We got tons of smoke from those fires. So it was pretty scary for a minute. And I'm like, oh, well, if we're getting this much smoke, it's gotta be bad up there. But I'm glad you guys are
I would
safe.
like to I'd like to apologize to the entire United States for our Canadian our Canadian smoke. Sorry about that, guys.
That was very Canadian of you.
You say
Uh,
sorry, right?
yes.
I know,
Oh,
eh?
but you don't have to apologize to us. It's okay. We understand the world's on fire literally everywhere, so totally get it. um, so today, for those who are listening, we're going to be talking about channeling deities and kind of the practices that we all kind of share and encompass with each other. And yeah, so now, Lova, you were saying before we started recording that this was kind of a private practice and now you're getting it more public. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So for I've been channeling for multiple years now, but I was not comfortable just being open about it.
Hmm.
I, and with time, by just coming across so many people, so many channelers, I felt more comfortable to share it with the world. Yes.
I feel that. I have been channeling for quite some time as well, and it was always one of those practices for me that was kind of like, well, I don't know if I'm doing it right or if my way is the one that everybody would understand. And so when I do it, it's like, oh, well, it kind of comes with that degree of the social construct of, are you crazy because you're channeling a deity? And then once you kind of get in a like-minded group that are like, no, tell us how this works and explain it to us and help us do it, it's really interesting and fascinating, especially to watch what like in our group, a lot of our members started to learn how to channel on their own, and watching that progression go from not really being able to do it or do it successfully to being able to do it successfully and in their own way, and it's just such a cool experience. So
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just agree with you. Yes.
So what were, you know how does channeling kind of look for you? Obviously, for a lot of practitioners, it's going to look very different because, we're all individuals and our practices are individual. But how does it kind of work for you? Like, what is your process for channeling?
Well, to channel, I usually will lay down on the bed, and Eric will be there to kind of write down the
Mm-hmm.
conversation or ask questions. Um, and so I would lay down, I would take a lot of deep breath, and I would just focus on emptying myself because I channel from a shamanic background. So
Mm-hmm.
I see it as like emptying the bone, so being a hollow bone.
Mm-hmm.
And so at some point I just feel like I just feel my skin, but inside of me is empty. You know, like a these Easter chocolate,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
like yeah, I feel like that. Like an Easter chocolate. And so from my head, I feel uh, like a beam of energy coming through my head. And then I would inhale the spirit in. Um, and it will shape itself as if it's smoke, and it will shape itself into my mold, and it will take space from there.
I think that's kind of how mine works a little bit too. It's a kind of tapping into the weird web of weird for me, and um, then obviously taking those deep breaths, and then it's interesting how yours is comes in through like almost the top of your head. Mine comes in directly through my third eye, and like I feel it in my forehead, and then it's like, okay, now I'm tapped, I understand, and it's almost like I feel that connection between my third eye and whomever I'm channeling, um and get to kind of be tapped into them, and then allowing them to kind of speak through me and all that. It's a very interesting process. And um it's not, so those who are listening, I'd like to preface a little bit of housekeeping. So if you're new to channeling, I highly recommend that you kind of learn the background of it and what it is and what it kind of is, as much as you can from obviously texts. But channeling is also one of those things, there's not going to be a whole lot written about it because it's more of an advanced practice. And so it's not in the basic handbooks of 101 witchcraft or 101, kind of things. So if you're doing it, make sure that you have somebody with you to help pull you out in case something happens. If you get uncomfortable or things turn a little weird, because sometimes things like to hijack the session, and having somebody there to pull you out is always a good idea, just so that everything is safe. That's my housekeeping notice for everyone who's listening. But outside of that, yeah, definitely, I encourage everybody to try it at least once.
I think it's also interesting how there is a range of the usage of the term channeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes people take it as like, oh, okay, I'm closing my eyes, I'm reaching out, and okay, I can hear messages I'm conveying and that type of thing. And that's certainly one aspect or one form that channeling takes. But then there's channeling that on the other end of the spectrum is almost much more like you're literally giving the spirit your vocal cords. You're literally
Mm-hmm.
letting that spirit move your face and body, right? It's literally more on the side of spirit possession
Yes.
than and so I think that's very important to keep those terms, well, to kind of clarify what we're talking about here. And so with certainly with Lauva, right? Um, she it's actually quite incredible to sit in on these sessions because um, it's a complete transformation of being, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, and it's just an absolute pleasure to witness.
I have to say that in those kinds of regards, there have been several sessions that I've done with my coven, and I'll get out of the session and they'll be like, your voice changed. It sounded like you had multiple voices coming out of you. It was very interesting and creepy. And um, it kind of depends on also what we were channeling. Sometimes it's spirits, sometimes it's deities. But the difference between those two is how things shift almost biologically within the body of whoever the channeler is. Like, I can have a range of vocal cords, but sometimes, according to them and according to the recordings, because we record all of our sessions audibly, so, we can go back and listen to them, it won't sound like me. It'll sound like somebody else. And which is just insanely crazy and so awesome because it's like, wow, that really is different. And so it's a fun kind of experience to watch and witness, and then to go back and look at how everything else transpired. And now we have a couple of members who are going into channeling themselves, and it's cool to watch them go through similar processes of how they change as well.
Absolutely. And oh, sorry, go ahead, Lava.
Oh, no, it's okay. I just wanted to add that there is, you can start with like soft technique of channeling, and then you can just move, through more difficult. By this, I mean, it's, you have easier type of channeling where it's just, yes, you hear the voice in your head and then you kind of translate it in your word
Hmm.
out loud. But you can also, um, then I think it's become more and more difficult as you have to let more and more space for the spirit to be in and interact with your vessel. Um, and of course, it can be, you want to set boundaries so you keep your integrity and you are safe. But usually, the first thing you do is to channel a deity or a spirit that you know and that you trust and that you already can know the energy. So you
Hmm.
know it's the right one. And one thing I find interesting is that when you do uh, core shamanism, you have a difference between um, different type of channeling and spirit possession. And the way, like, if we talk about it in a malevolent way, like the spirit possession is not something that you consent. It is an intrusion
Hmm.
from a spirit that just decided to possess you, compared to, let's say, what they would call merging, which is inviting the spirit in, um, or becoming the spirit.
I think that those are really great terms to do it. My personal terminology that I use, and I've heard others use this too, when it comes to, like you were saying, soft channeling, I call that tapping, where you're tapping into them. It's almost kind of like, you get to, or if you want to put it in a video game kind of sense, where, like, for example, from like Cyberpunk, you jack into them and you get to kind of download some information, but you're still you. And then, like you were saying, where you have all the way up through spirit possession. Um, and possession is one of those finicky terms that nobody really likes to use. And I think in those kinds of regards, every word has a two-sided edge. And so spirit possession can be good if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, or you're just being like, oh, I'm just going to do this, and you haven't set your boundaries, or you don't have your guardians in place or your protections in place, then yes, it can become malevolent. Now I would say in terms of deities, I've never had a deity that forcibly possessed. It was always invitation. There's always consent. And every deity, especially the Norse deities are very big into consent. They don't really ever overstep those bounds. And at least with me personally, I've never had one overstep those bounds. They're very much big into consent, and they want you to say yes before anything transpires. And if you don't say yes and you say, no, I'm not comfortable with this, it stops. It no means no to the deities, which is great. So, um, I think Now, Lova, do you have that kind of experience when you're working with deities, where y the consent is 100% key for them?
Yes, I would say yes, except for one time. And it was actually I found out later that it was an initiation, just to see if I could take it.
Oh, yeah.
Eric was there. We were like 1 month into dating each other, and, it was pretty interesting. I don't know, Eric, do you wanna tell the story? You're really good at it.
Sure, I'm not sure. Brittany, have we told this story on your show before?
Maybe? I don't remember.
Oh, okay. You
It
mind if we go
it
over it
has
again? It's
been a
just
minute since y'all have been here, and I am Dory when it comes to things, so
yeah, so it happened, yeah, when we had been dating for a month, and it was a long distance relationship, and we lived about 2 hours apart. And in one weekend, Laova, she's attending a this art workshop, and when she does art, she really trances out. And so she was doing art for maybe like what 8 hours, 12 hours that day. She gets back to her apartment. She continues to do that art, and she's feeling like there's this energetic vortex in the room, right, Lova?
Yeah, so it was like in the so I had an apartment where my kitchen and my living room were together,
Mhm.
and I was using the kitchen table as a desk for drawing and doing my collage, which is weird because I had my studio. Like I this was just making no sense already. But I felt a big vortex in the center of my living room, just going round and round. And so I just put everything on the floor and I started to create there instead. And now, Eric, I'll let you tell the rest.
Sure. So then she calls me about 2 hours after that and is rather alarmed and says, "I can't remember the last 2 hours." And I figure she's just super ungrounded or something, so I just, walk her through a grounding exercise on the phone, and, then she, goes off to take a shower. Well, after a shower, she calls me again, and she says, "Eric, I can't remember the half an hour when I was taking a shower." And while I'm talking to her, then something switches in her, and I just hear growling on the other end of the phone,
Oh.
and and so what do you do in that situation? You revert to everything you've seen on TV. And so it's like, what do I do? Well, I don't know. You don't have a right to be there. You need to leave. I cast you out. This kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it eventually switched back to Lauva, and she then proceeded to like she was thoroughly freaked out by the situation, started bawling, and it's like, okay, we got to figure this out. And so the next morning, I was like, okay, just it's already like midnight. I'm gonna come early morning. We're going to figure this out.
Mhm.
And so I packed up a kit of like, I've been in esotericism for a long time before. So I take every single amulet and trinket and anything that I can think that can help in this situation, pack it in a bag, take tons of salt, tons of cleansing incense, all that. And so I go to her apartment and I get there. We start cleansing. I start going around putting salt everywhere and cleansing with incense. And it's funny because we were a month into dating. And so I decided, look, I don't know what's going on here, but if anything goes bad, I want some kind of documented evidence of whatever happens. Like this is pure self-preservation on my part. So
Mhm.
I actually brought a little handy cam on a tripod that I put on the kitchen table. And and reviewing that tape after, what I do notice is that when I was going around putting salt down and otherwise cleansing with incense, their Lauva was following me, but she had her head down and she looked like she was drunk. And so already something was stirring there. And so when I'm finished then cleansing the apartment, Lauva, I can't find Lauva. I have no idea where she is. And she's out there the patio, which is, 3 stories up.
Oh, goodness.
And so I go out there, and she's already kind of huddled in a corner, and I kneel down, and I just see it's not her. Like, I can see on the facial expression, the way that the facial muscles are being held. And so I just ask, "Who are you?" It's very, very surreal thing that first time when you see this, because it's like, "That's not you. Who is this?" And at that point, Lauva started looking like a scared animal. And then she started standing up, and she put her hand on the railing and almost looked like she was going to put her foot on a chair, like she was going to jump over. And at that point, I'm like, nope. And I just like grab her in a bear hug, and I just drag her inside. And of course, that's when it starts fighting back with me a little bit, and like, hissing and flailing a little bit. And so I bring her back, and I try to put her on a chair in the kitchen. And of course, I then, thinking, wow, I got to get this on camera. I grab the handy cam. I'm trying to place it uh, in a way that it can capture her. But then it takes that opportunity to get up and start rushing towards the front door. And I'm thinking, oh, this is great. This is the last thing I need, for her to get into the hallway and then me to like grab her and try to drag her back into the apartment. Like, the optics on this are not good.
No.
So, um, but thankfully, she's fiddling with the lock still. And when I'm able to get her and just drag her back, and I'm able to kind of wrestle her onto the floor of the kitchen. And I'm just holding her there like in a UFC hold from behind, just trying to keep her still, but also to make sure her head doesn't hit the floor or anything. And then it was just the most uncanny 30 minutes of that I'd ever had in my life up to then. And it's, what do you do in that situation? You fall back on uh, you call in every spiritual favor that you've ever made, right? So you call
Right?
upon every deity, every spirit that you've ever met. Like, I need your help here. And it was weird because in that time on the floor, holding her while talking to the entity and calling upon my spirits and everything, I was not afraid ever. I knew, okay, I can get through this. I just knew at this deep soul level certainty, everything is going to be okay. Just move through this. It's okay. And eventually I told the being, okay, look, I can understand why you want to be here. This was like after half an hour. I understand why you want to be here. She's a very lovely girl. I'm sure that she's a very nice vessel, but you can't stay here. And if you stay, I'm going to uh, make it an unpleasant experience. You're not going to be able to enjoy your time in this vessel, because I will keep fighting you and keep on you and harass you with this. And so what happened then is it uttered, throughout the entire experience, everything I was getting from this being was very guttural, very like,
Mhm.
and it said the first word that it said, and the only word, and it said, fine. And then 30 seconds after that, Lauva pops back in. Her first question is, why am I on the floor? And she had no memory of it. Um, and yeah, what we found out later, right, is that this experience has to be put into context. In that Lauva had been doing a lot of shamanic journeying for a long time. And that morning, sorry, the morning before, I believe, Lauva said to her guides in a journey and asked them, what's next? Show me what's next. I'm ready for what's next. And of course, then later that day or the next day, she had this experience, and it was them giving her what's next. And in retrospect, after time had passed, we realized in working with our guides and working with our spirits that actually the being who came in to Lauva was a a guide of hers, and that this was an initiation. This was a test, And a test, an initiation can be very scary.
Mhm. Yes.
It's a transformational event where you're never the same afterwards. And the way that we understand it after is that this was basically saying, okay, you're interested in this shamanism stuff, you're interested in the spirits. Okay, well, we're going to show you what's actually out there, and we're going to see if you're going to run away from it. You could, Love and I easily could have had this experience and been like, okay, well, I'm going to go burn all my occult books, and I'm going to go join a monastery, and Love goes and joins a convent. But we doubled down. We're like, wow, that was absolutely amazing. We have to dig into this as deeply as possible. We have to learn what's out there because okay, the reality of this has been confirmed to us. Now, what do we do with that? What can we find out? What is out there? And so we just doubled down, and eventually that led to creating the Spirit World Center and all that. And it was a test. It was like, okay, we're going to show you some of the scariest stuff that can happen. This is literally one of the scariest things that can happen in your relationship with spirits. And are you going to run from it, or are you going to, are you going to double down? And we really feel that that was the initiation. And also, in retrospect, her guide was the one that was there, and ultimately the sense that we have is that everything there was a pantomime. It was an act meant to freak us out as much as possible to see if we had the fortitude to withstand something like that. And so even like the pretending to step up on the to get near the railing almost like she was going to jump, it was like, no, this was actually a pantomime to just freak us out and be appropriate enough to see if we could withstand it. And so yeah, that was one heck of an initiation event. And don't worry, people. Initiations are not always that intense. They can be, but
They
at the
can
same time,
be.
initiations can be a lot more relaxed. But initiation often involves that test, that trial, right?
Mhm.
And that's certainly what we got.
I think that that's a really interesting kind of experience, and terrifying experience at the same time. Um, I'm glad that you came out, sane on the other side of that. That would be terrifying to experience. Wow.
You know, Speaking to your point about well, about them not doing anything that you're not okay with, that you haven't given the okay.
Hmm.
It's curious because Laova did tell her spirits to show her what's next in her journey the night before or the morning before. So she did kind of, what would you say, Laova? Did you kind of give them permission?
Well, we can see it like this for sure. I mean, um, because I never set boundaries of about possession.
Hmm.
So there's that. But also, what I know is that the spirits they will uh, give you challenges that they know you can overcome. They won't give you something just to like make you fail. Like they know you if you can be up to the challenge and actually win that. So that's something that
I think
I
that
like.
that's pretty true. Um, whether or not you, as the practitioner, believe that you're up to it, that's a whole nother story. But most of the time, in my experiences, most deities and spirits will never throw anything too hard at you. Now, let me rephrase this. Deities and spirits that want to work with you will never throw anything that you can't handle at you. Spirits and um we're going to say other entities or whatever you want to call them, malevolent entities, they don't necessarily want to work with you, and they also don't have your best interests at heart. And so they may throw some things at you that go, no, I didn't consent to this. I was not okay with this. This is not all right. And that kind of thing, that's where you can potentially get hurt. Um, does it happen always? No. Does it happen as often as the television makes it seem? No. But it can. And so that's why when you're doing any sort of spirit work, deity communication, anything, you want to have your boundaries set. You want to have your wards up. You want to make sure you're taking your precautions. And, just willy nilly saying, oh, I'm not going to do any of that because it's going to hinder my stuff. I have so many wards all over my property, all over my house, everywhere. And I still do spirit communication almost daily and never have had it interfere. So if you do it correctly, I would say that you're never going to run into that, but also making sure that anything that means you harm or just gets curious and is like not really the best kind of thing for you to be playing with, um that's what you kind of want to keep out. Everything that you want to give consent to or that is open to working with you in a benevolent way or even just a, I would say, a almost indifferent teaching way, because not everything is 100% benevolent or 100%, good either. It's somewhere in the middle. But as long as you're getting something out of it and learning and all that, then it's okay. You can communicate with that. And I've still come across stuff that wasn't in my best interest, but it got yeeted out of my personal bubble very quickly because it wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah, it's so important not to be kind of Pollyanna-ish, and be like everything's love and light. And it's like, no, there are things out there that are, I like to say, predatory, right?
Yes.
In that it wants to eat you, it wants to get something from you, and ultimately, the lion is evil to the gazelle, right? And so it's kind of that same situation. There's leeches and there's mosquitoes out there, both in the physical world, but also in the spiritual world, and these things will prey upon you, and so you have to be careful of that, absolutely. But that, yeah, and so you ward against that. You do your cleansings, and you make sure that you have a lot of intention, a lot of protection going on, and then the the channeling act, or even the act of spirit possession can be incredibly, incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I mean, the positive beings that can come through. Oh my, like Laova. Do you want to talk about whale spirits and the and the positive vibes that that brings?
Oh gosh, I love whale spirits. I say she because I feel like she's kind of a feminine whale that comes in. Or there's more of the kind of the feminine energy to her, and it just feels like a big wave of calm and kind of heavy but flowy energy all at once. And when I'm really stressed, this is she's the my queen of the ocean. She knows how to navigate these emotions, and I just call on her, and I just invoke her to be within me because I just benefit so much from her energy. And often, like, um, she likes to sing, so she does like whale songs. It's pretty, pretty nice.
That's awesome. That is super
Yeah.
awesome. Kind of going back to initiations. Did I ever tell you guys the story of my initiation with the Morgan?
No,
Think you might have, but that
I
was a
don't
while
remember.
It was
ago.
a while
What
ago.
happened?
So, in terms of, for those who are listening, y'all may have heard this. I think you probably have through a couple of episodes, but if you haven't, here's the story. So, the Morgan had been kind of poking her head around and kind of, poking at me for a while. And I was terrified of her because I had bought into this whole you can't work with her unless you're X, Y, and Z, or you can't do this, or she's not for the faint of heart. Well, truth be told, she is not for the faint of heart, but anybody can work with her if she's willing to work with you. And so I had kind of believed that I was not of the appropriate par because of some folks that I'd worked with in my past and that she wouldn't want to work with me. And so when she started kind of poking around, I'm like, why are you here? Like, what do you want? Ma'am, you freak me out. Why are you here? And I ended up getting extremely ill. I was super sick with the flu, and The only reason I even know that this was a legit initiation was because I was so sick and I was actually scared to fall asleep. So a friend of mine who didn't sleep, who stayed up all night, was like, just call me on Discord. I will stay with you all night long while you sleep. And if anything happens, I'll shout in your ear and wake you up. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. My husband was also working nights at the time. And so, like, it was not like he couldn't be home. And so it was all a thing. So I ended up going to sleep and I probably had a fever of like 101 and I was feeling terrible. And I ended up having a dream that wasn't a dream. And you know when you kind of have those dreams that just don't feel right. They don't feel like dreams, they feel more like visions. And I ended up seeing her. She walked into my dream and she was like, I would like you to come with me. And I'm like, do I have to? And she's like, if you trust me, I will guide you through everything. And I'm like, okay. So she held out her hand. I took her hand and she guided me into essentially the void. And I saw things that were absolutely, utterly terrifying. From skulls to dead bodies to basically anything that death could touch, I saw it. And I had other entities that were around that I could see, but I couldn't touch them. It was very terrifying. And then she guided me through this whole thing. And then I came to this open chasm, and you could see the other side of it. And the only thing that you could see around you was darkness, other than like it was just dimly lit enough that I could see this chasm. And she disappeared from standing next to me and she was on the other side and she says, walk to me. And I'm like, there's no bridge, there's nothing here. She's like, walk to me. And I almost didn't do it, and I remember almost not doing it. And then she says, if you trust me, you'll be fine. And I was just like, part of my brain was just like, fuck it, it's a dream, what's gonna happen to you, right? Just go. And the other part of my brain is like, this is not a dream, don't walk across that. And so I walked across it, did not fall. There was no bridge, but I did not fall. And I got to the other side and she said, when you wake up tomorrow, you will see the other side of the world. And I'm like, what does that mean? And the next morning I woke up, I was perfectly fine, I was no longer sick. And that does not happen ever, especially with my immune system. And when I woke up the next morning, my friend who was still on the phone with me was like, you made the scariest noises in your sleep. Like, he was like, I swear to God you were possessed. He said, I was screaming at you, trying to wake you up. He said, you would not wake up for anything. He said, you made the most terrifying noises. He said, it sounded like you were possessed by a demon. And I was like, I don't remember making any noises. And he's like, what did you dream? And I told him, and he was like, that doesn't sound like a dream. And I was like, I don't think it was. And the next day, my psychic senses blew up. I saw everything. Like I had kind of seen things prior, and all that, but I had almost kind of shut my psychic senses down because I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to use the term psychic. I didn't like it. I didn't like kind of being in touch with that. I didn't want to be the weirdo that saw things or knew things or any of that. And so I was very reserved and kind of scared of those abilities because of society. And then the next day, everything blew up. I knew things about people that I never wanted to know. I knew I could see other beings. I saw everything on my farm because it was like the veil was gone. And it was like that for probably about a month, which was really infuriating because it was like I see everything. And then everything started to kind of like I was able to turn the dials to kind of figure out like how much I wanted to see, when I wanted to see it, when I wanted it turned on, when I didn't want it turned on. And once I kind of figured that out, then it was the Morgan kind of came back after that and she was like, now you're ready for my work. And I'm like, are we're actually doing this? Like, you're one of mine now? And she's like, I'm one of your main ones now. And I'm like, oh. And fast forward to today, I am a priestess of the Morgan and a death worker.
It's amazing how initiation comes through, isn't it? And yeah, it's that fear, but also, yeah, those animalistic noises that you're making, that I've seen it many times as well. It's like a reprogramming of that physical and energetic nervous system,
Yeah.
and it leads to lasting change, you know?
It's
Yeah.
almost like touching the primal side of yourself that, society hasn't gotten its little fingers on and told you that, you can't do this or you can't do that and, convinced you otherwise. And then when you actually touch that primal side, that true kind of spirit side of yourself, then you get to see all the things that you could become and all the different like avenues of magic that you can touch and work with. And when you really tap into that is where the really cool stuff happens. And then you're just like, wow, that's really awesome that I did that thing because you were able to tap into the deep, dark spots of yourself.
Absolutely. We are capable of such wonders if people just learn to trust themselves, if
Mm-hmm.
people just learn to not shut it off before they even get started because they're afraid that they just don't have that capability, right? If we just trust, there's amazing things that we can do. I mean, even I can channel, like Lauva especially is gifted at it. But if you just take your time and trust yourself, I got some pretty good advice a long time ago about channeling and deity possession and such. When it came to, you know what, just have a drink first, and I anyone, see, the thing is, Lauva is very, you know right brain, very artistic, very intuitive, right? And then I'm kind of the left brain complement to that, right? I'm very much about, oh, my, you know knowledge and kind of rational understanding of things, and so we complement each other very well. But at the same time, even my left brain self is able to do some channeling and such. I need to take a little longer for it. I need to take a few extra steps, like have a nice bourbon first,
Mm-hmm.
but then, lay on that bed, take your time, and just allow that process to happen. It might take an hour, who
Mm-hmm.
knows? But at the same time, set yourself aside, and it comes through, So yeah, people are capable of anything. They just have to give themselves permission to do it.
I completely agree with that. And I think that, you know, if you find yourself struggling with, channeling or even spirit work or even working with like your psychic sense, whatever you want to call it, kind of allowing yourself to, like you were saying, have a drink first to almost just kind of take some of that stress off and decompress a little bit helps wonders so much. And me, I don't have to do that anymore. Now it's just kind of like take a few deep breaths, kind of center myself, and I can just tap right into wherever I'm going to go or whatever I'm going to do. And then if I'm channeling, then I'm opening myself up to allow whatever's happening or whoever I'm communicating with to kind of come through. But it's interesting how when you first get started, it's like, no, I can't do this. The brain tries to stop you too much, and it's like, nope, 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 you can't do that. Nope, that's not okay. You're gonna be called a crazy person. Don't do this. And then eventually your brain just will quiet down, and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go chill out while you do whatever it is that you're doing. And my brain kind of goes on vacation for a little bit. That left side of that very analytical side of the brain, that tells you no. It just is like, well, I'm gonna go sit in the corner and do something else, I guess, while you do this. And it works out.
Brittany, you were mentioning earlier that you've done some channeling with your group and such, and
Hmm.
that do you have I find this varies a lot from person to person. When you do it, do you find that you have memory of what happened? Or,
Sometimes.
yeah, yeah, same with love. Sometimes, right? It depends on situation, the spirit, the
It
intention, all these
it
things.
depends on how deep it goes. So like if I get deep into a trance with something, I don't remember hardly anything at all. and my group will be like, hey, this happened, you said this was what happened, this got really freaky here, or whatever it was. And other times, if it's kind of a light channel, and sometimes like channeling is not just like a sure thing for me, like it's um like you can get every piece right, do all the stuff, and even then whatever, and this happens a lot more with spirits than deities. It's almost like they don't know how to communicate through you, and it takes them more time, and sometimes it doesn't come through very clearly. Sometimes I don't see things as clearly because they're having a hard time manifesting for me. Um, and they may think that they're fully manifested, but for me to be able to see them, to kind of cross over that veil and see things really clearly, sometimes it doesn't come through very clear. And um and that's okay. Like, I know that that happens, and you get what you get. And also sometimes they don't really want to talk, they'll just want to sit there, and so they won't say anything for 15-20 minutes, and then out of the blue you'll just get some strange statement, and it's like, well, that didn't make sense. Well, I don't know if it 100% always makes sense. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, because I don't always remember what's being asked. So I'll have to, go back and listen and be like, oh, well, yeah, that kind of made a little bit of sense. That made more sense than it did when it came out of my mouth. Um, and then, we also do Estes channeling as well. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, with the Estes method.
Yes, with
Yeah.
the half ping pong balls on the eyes.
That's oh, that's Gansfield.
Oh, sorry, that's the other one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no, sorry, I know what
Gansfield.
you mean. Yeah,
Estes
yeah,
is the
yeah.
one where you use the spirit box, and you use noise canceling headphones, so you can't hear the person who's asking questions, and you only hear the spirit box. And we have a member of our group who does Estes, and she's fantastic at it. She's probably the best Estes person I've ever seen done. She'll get full paragraphs come straight out the Estes box, which is insane in my eyes, because I'm like, I've never seen anybody give me like a full paragraph. And she will, because she does half channeled and half Estes, and so she gets the full statement of whatever they're saying. And it's the coolest experience when it happens. And it doesn't always work, again, some of the deities or spirit entities or whoever that we're trying to communicate with, they don't always get they don't understand how the box works, so they don't know how to communicate through it. And so it'll come through a little gibberish. And so it'd be like, well, that statement didn't make sense, or this didn't make sense, because they're having more difficulty doing that. But when you are able to fully channel with them, then they're like, yeah, I know how to do this. I can communicate this way. It's really interesting how the different modalities of spirit communication sometimes work. And sometimes even then, like, the only way they can communicate is through like yes, no, and that's like pendulum um kind of communication. So it's interesting how all the different modalities of um from soft channeling to full on possession actually work with communication.
Yeah, it really is a matter of people's spiritual nervous systems, and it's always different. And even on our podcast, I've interviewed like 70 mediums and psychics and people with sensitivities, and you always get different ways that the spirits come through, different ways that they see spirits, different ways that they experience spirits, different ways they hear them, different. And I really feel that it comes down to that spiritual nervous system, how your energies are interfacing with the spirit world and with your body and all this. And so, yeah, it really is a matter of finding the technique that works for you and your spiritual nervous system. If you have really good results with a pendulum, that's okay. You don't have to do full on spirit possession or channeling, or if you're hearing through a pendulum and that's where you're at now, that's totally okay. And some people are blessed with the ability to open up in a big way and have these other experiences. It's all a matter of finding what just fits for you. And once you find that, it can just have amazing impact on your life. And it's so curious, even with channeling spirits, I find that there's differences in terms of what kind of effect that has on the body.
Mhm.
And for instance, with Laova, it's quite something to see the change in how a spirit is holding her facial muscles, right? So, we have our face muscles, and a lot of our appearance is based on the varying degrees to which we unconsciously keep certain areas tense and loose. And so when different spirits come through in a channeling session with Lauva, I absolutely find that you can almost tell them based on the difference in Lauva's facial express. I wouldn't say expression, but in the underlying way that her face is being held. And it's not so. It's really amazing how different spiritual modalities can have this different impact on on us. And then it really is this interface between our spiritual systems and our bodies. And so, yeah, I really encourage people just to really um, find what's right for them, because there's different based on who you are and based on your energetic nervous system. There's going to be techniques that are going to work more easily for you, and once you find that, really, you know, see where you can take it. And of course, I also want to stress, though, everyone can do all of these techniques, right? It
Mhm.
might take a little extra time, okay, but it's definitely possible. And yeah, once it enters into your life, it really can have amazing benefits. I'm just thinking here, one of the benefits that really helps Lauva and myself is that when we get into a fight, oftentimes she channels to bring in a mediator, and it is quite the experience.
Oh, that's
It's quite the
interesting. Huh. Spiritual medium or mediator, that's interesting. That's super cool. Um, I do have one question for Lava since you do a lot of most of the channeling, I would say. Do you find that it is easier for you? Are you able to just like close your eyes and just kind of go into that state, or do you have to like be blindfolded? Do you have to like have um I don't know, any sort of like thing to help you kind of focus into that channeling state?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends what I do. If I do more like shamanic journeying, I would need a blindfold.
Hmm.
But usually I channel with my eyes open.
Oh,
I
wow, that's
yeah.
interesting. I can't do that. My I think it's because my neurodivergent brain would just be like, ooh, shiny, ooh, shiny, ooh, shiny. Yeah. I
But
do that on a normal day without trying to channel. I have to be blindfolded for the whole thing.
well, then it makes me think, you know how you say that you feel it from your third eye and
Hmm.
I feel it from the top of my head? Maybe it has something to do with it. I
Maybe.
don't,
Maybe.
yeah.
That's very interesting how that kind of works. Also, my other question for I would say probably both of you would be when a spirit comes in, spirit slash deity, whichever, you want to apply this to, or both. Um, how do you sense them? Do you sense them around you? Do you see them? Or if you're channeling, I think Lava, you've already kind of answered this where it comes in through the top of your head like smoke. But do you feel it before it does that? Like, do you feel just like there's somebody sitting next to me kind of thing?
Um, Usually sometimes I can feel that a spirit wants to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just kind of it's tough to describe. It's almost like a perfume, just like it
Yeah.
smells like it's just a feeling. It's when you're hungry, but this is like a nudge for like, hey, someone wants to talk. And yeah.
I think that's very interesting. Um, Eric, is it the kind of same for you, or is it different for you because, you're more left-brained?
Yeah, I'm definitely on the left brain side of things. And so my interaction with the spirits is very much ceremonial, holding space and, creating let's say a ceremony and sacred space to then bring them in and feeling that presence, right? I can certainly feel that presence, that tingly sensation that something's there, right? Um, and so even at the Spirit World Center, this is something that we like to teach and offer people multiple ways in, right? So if you're left brained and you kind of want to do more of a ceremony based, almost contractually, like set up a meeting type thing to work with spirits, you have that. Um, but at the same time, if you want to connect in this very intuitive, right brained way, then that's also a possibility, right? Because to everyone, everyone has different needs, and so in giving that to them. So yeah, for me, I'm very much more. I rely on Laova to know if anyone wants to talk to us.
That's a fair thing. That's a fair assessment. I know that there are times where if it's one of my deities, I know all their like energy signatures and how they feel because they all feel different. And I know, this is the Morgan, this is Loki, this is Thor, etc., etc., etc. So, in those kinds of instances, I know who's there because their energy signature is very like, oh, that's how they feel. But if I have some random being or spirit that's just like, there's somebody standing behind me kind of thing. It's like, can I help you? What can I do for you? Do you want to talk or are you just being a lurker and a creeper? If you're being a creeper, please leave. But if you're just here observing, you can stay for the moment, but if you have nothing to say, please leave, kind of thing. So it's interesting because I've noticed there's about two people in our group that are similar to me in that regard, and others it's very different for them. So that's why I asked because I was like, I wonder if they're similar to me or if they're slightly different.
Oh, funniest thing about being able to sense spiritual energies and such um, is dogs. And so when Laova is channeling, we had a Australian Shepherd who passed away a couple of years ago, but um, when that particular dog would come in the room when Laova is channeling, it would be so freaked out. And so like Laova would just be sitting at the table, right? And like ostensibly like there'd be no difference that a dog should be picking up, right? I mean, it's just Laova sitting at a table talking with me. There's not even really a change in the voice or anything like that. But this Lacey, she would walk into the room and just see Laova and see that she's channeling, and just she could see. I don't think she didn't feel a malevolent energy or something, but I believe she saw a shift in energy that she didn't know, and so she was just like, okay, this is above my pay grade. I don't know what's going on
It's
here. I'm
like
gonna,
I'm out.
and so yeah, and so she would but she wouldn't just get freaked out. She would enter the room, walk into the doorway, and then literally just start slowly backing out of the room. Like she would back up out of the room. Like, I'm just gonna go. And it's so funny because we have another Australian Shepherd now. She's still young. She's 2 years, and she she's the opposite. She loves channeling. She like just rushes Lova when she's channeling.
Oh, that's cute.
So they can definitely feel the energies.
In terms of feeling energies, the animals do that as well. We surprisingly get a lot of animal energies, like because we've had since my husband and I've been married, we've had two dogs that have passed, and um, in his entire life living here, there's probably been I don't know 7 dogs total, that are all buried in various places on the property. And so, every now and then, our dog Bean will act like there's another dog trying to steal her food. And then I have to kind of tap in and see if there's anything actually there, because she will legit act like there is another dog stealing her food. And she's very non-confrontational with other dogs. Like, she's like, no, you can have it, it's fine, I'll just sit here. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? And so then I have to tap in and I'm like, oh, that's not yours. Bad dog, come with me, I will get you basically a food offering, so that way you can leave my actual physical dog alone so she can eat. um and yeah, she's very particular and she will pick up on those things. And there'll be other times now, when she's eating, where she will stop and she'll turn and she'll look at like somebody, almost like there's somebody standing next to her watching her, like, can I help you? I'm just having my dinner. And we'll stare at them for a good 2 or 3 minutes and just kind of watching and seeing what they're going to do before I'm like, hey, focus, back to food, please. Finish your food here. And then she's like, oh, okay. I guess mom's going to keep that from happening, kind of thing. It's very peculiar. And we have a lot of spirits that pass through the house. And so, but we also have the wards up, so none of them are malevolent in any way. They won't actually do anything. Basically, if it's like, you don't have our best intentions, you can't come in. If you would like to just pass through and you're just curious and you mean no harm, that's totally fine. We don't mind. And so yeah, she picks up on it. It's very interesting. But as far as me channeling, she'll sleep through it. She doesn't even care.
It's that's so cute, and yeah, it's so important that you work with those spirits of the local landscape. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually funny when they come through in channeling too. Laura, do you want to tell the story of the Mimis?
Oh, yeah.
This
Well,
was this was hilarious when it
the
happened.
the kinda thing you don't expect when you channel. Well, we were of course, I was on the bed, and, Eric was there with his notebook, and I didn't know what to channel, I just didn't know what it was, and I could at some point, I felt it was the spirit of the land, and it took time for the spirit to be able to feel comfortable with using, like, moving my mouth and, uh, using, like, the body a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and so the only thing it kept saying was "Mimi," and it would be like a conversation that goes like that. "Me, me, 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 me. Me, 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 me." So, and, there was in my mind in the background, it's like, "What a stupid channeling." But I'm like, "No, no, don't say things like that. It's just a spirit expressing itself." And so, we're like, "What the heck is it?" So we just call it Mimi. And then later on, we Googled the name Mimi Fairy, and it's an actual like fairy from
And
is it?
yeah, an Aboriginal Australian Aboriginal lore, and so they actually have fairies, like a class of fairies that dwell within the crevices between rocks. And the thing is also that during this channeling session, when okay, I was saying me, 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 but actually it kind of sounded like Beaker. Me, 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 me.
But you're right.
So and so but then I gave what was coming through a piece of paper and a pen, and it basically drew a picture, a map of the yard, and then it drew trails through the yard, and I got the sense that it was like showing like where it would trape, it's walking paths, and and I got the sense through that conversation that it was telling me its home was this big bluff of rocks, this kind of cliff face that we have in this ravine behind the house. And I was getting the sense that it was, that this was its home. And so we had two data points from this being, right? So one, it kept saying me, 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 me. And two, it was, we got the sense that its home was in these big rocks. And so yeah, like that's the crazy thing, right, Lova? So a month later, we we Google. I'm just like, okay, is there anything that any spirit called Mimi's? Because we started calling it Mimi, um, just because of the way it talked, right? That inspired us to call it Mimi or the Mimis.
Hmm.
And so I Google that, and then boom, first result on Wikipedia, this class of fairies within the Australian Aboriginal lore. And the craziest thing about that, right, is that in that lore, they live in big rocks. So it's like this double confirmation. And it's like, wow, it was quite something. They're fun. They're fun to talk to.
That sounds really cool. And it's also interesting sometimes when I channel things that can't speak basically what we call the common tongue or English. Um, I will have it kind of like searching through the dictionary in my brain, and it will be like, I think it's this word, but I don't know if this is what that means. And it'll say some random word, and I'll, repeat that. And then whoever's asking the questions would be like, do you mean this? And they'd be like, I think so. And it's very interesting because when it first starts speaking, it's in a totally different language. And then I'm like, give it a minute and see if it can like translate through my brain. And then there are other times where there was one spirit that we spoke with, um, who basically spoke like ancient Egyptian. And I don't even know what the actual language of that would be, because I was like, this feels like ancient Egyptian. It feels like that's their time period. Um, and so when they couldn't speak English and they couldn't figure it out, but they were able to do yes or no's by nodding. So they could understand what we were asking, but they couldn't speak it. And it was really interesting. And it's kind of fun when entities come through and they're like, we don't speak that language. And then, you have other entities that will come through and they'll speak perfect English. And then they'll do something in a whole nother language that doesn't exist on this plane. And it's like, what was that? Like, I have a guardian who does that. And I'm like, what language was that? And they're like, oh, that's our language.
Yeah, similar to your point, the Mimis eventually did learn to speak in syllables other than Mimi. Um, Lauma, do you want to talk about that bilingual experience from your perspective?
Yeah, so the funny part is that, my primary language is French. And so it's really funny because what you say about how you give your brain as a, dictionary, and they kind of learn through your brain and you
Mm-hmm.
translate. So this is what happened with the Mimis. The thing is that they were not making the difference between French and English. And so I would have these sentences that was half French, half English, and like then you would just have Eric scratching his head, like, "What are you saying here?"
I had no idea what was going on.
It's like throw some French there and then swap to English. It just make no sense. And then they had to learn that there was like two like compartment, right? Like, okay, this is like French dictionary. This is English dictionary. Because yeah, that was interesting.
We had one spirit who came through, and that's all he spoke was French. And so we were trying to like Google translate some like phrases for him, and he got really angry because we wouldn't speak French. And like almost hostile with us because we wouldn't speak French to him. We were speaking English, like that was beneath him to, try to translate in English. He was a very interesting spirit that eventually got yeeted because he was just kind of being an asshole. So but he was interesting for the first little bit.
Oh, that's interesting. Was it a spirit from a certain era?
I don't know actually. He didn't give us a whole lot of information, and he was a spirit that ultimately came through starting with an attack. Like he tried to attack one of our members. And when we tried to figure out why, he refused to speak English. He would only speak French. And basically it was he was very hostile in the beginning, then kind of calmed down a little bit, was less hostile, and then became kind of hostile again when we would only speak English to him, and we were trying to, crudely translate French because I took French in college, but I barely remember how to speak it. I know like maybe three phrases. That's all I remember because I didn't use the language, so it's lost now. Um but yeah, he would get very angry and hostile towards us. It was a very interesting experience. But yeah, he eventually got yeeted out and kind of kicked out of the translation circle because he started with an attack and then just got really hostile with us. So he wasn't in our best interest.
Wow, that's very interesting. But I can see this because um I mean in Quebec, well, not now, no, it's okay, but I mean Quebec is a province of Canada, and it's the French, the French part of Canada.
Hmm.
And they tried to separate and become a country twice. One in like the 1980s, and then again in 1995. And there was a lot of animosity between, well, Francophone and Anglophone.
Hmm.
It was quite something, and I wonder if maybe you got someone like that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, he was just one of those spirits that, every now and then you'll get one that's just not very nice and just kind of an asshole, and he was one of those people that it was just like, really, that's where we're gonna go with this. Okay, out of all the things you could have chosen to do with your life, this is what you're choosing. All right.
Did you ever experience, like, when you channel, like kind of having a skill that you usually don't have?
um Not so much. Like when I channel, I almost kind of go into like um almost like a trance state. So like I'm not really moving or doing anything like that because I if I do that, it's almost my brain tries to kick me out of the trance if I try to move too much or do something. And of course, like I said before, I have to be blindfolded. But then there are times where I will understand other languages that I don't speak. And so that, I guess that would count to kind of answer your question. But um and sometimes I understand them, sometimes I don't. And it also it's a weird kind of experience. It also depends on how deep in the trance I am. If I'm super deep into it, then it's those kinds of things happen. If I'm just kind of more or soft channeled slash tapping in, usually it's like, oh, you're speaking another language, I don't understand what that means. And so yeah, and sometimes I can't go any deeper than a soft channel with some spirits. They won't let me.
Oh, that's super. Like, I never like hear a language and like understand it. I guess is more on a heart feeling. Like I would
Hmm.
not understand the words, but I could feel the meaning of it if it's another language. But there was one time where I was lying down and I was not, it was not about moving or anything like that, but I did start singing.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, and the thing is that session I was just channeling my higher self. I wanted to really connect with my higher self. And I start singing, and that's something that I usually do. But I went in a really deep trance, and um I actually started singing opera. And
Oh,
like,
wow.
and it was really like things that I've never done with my throat ever. I just started to sing in a way that was just insane. Eric was there. Eric, you can tell, like, it was just like crazy.
Yeah, it was something. She has some pipes. She has some pipes, that's for sure. Like just it was shocking, I mean, I didn't know that she had that in her. And it's just once again, it's one of those facets where it's just amazing how the spirits can work with your body in ways that you didn't even know that you could. I remember once, we were channeling Loki, and Laova was holding a pen, and Laova slash Loki threw the pen at me, and it 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 hit my chest in a way that it fell into the chest pocket of my dress shirt. So for like 10 feet away. So, it's
And knowing
just flicked the
Loki, he
pen
was
at
like,
me
"Yeah,
and it,
I got it in the
yeah,
pocket." He was probably so
yeah, it's like
excited.
one in a thousand kind of shots. So I mean, they can do amazing things through that body. Absolutely.
That's really fun. And Loki's a fun one to channel because you never know what you're gonna get. Um
Yeah.
he is one of those ones where it's like, okay, I you don't even know what, voice is gonna come through, whether it be male, female, whatever kind of, how he chooses to channel that day. But yeah, when he does, it's very interesting. He's a fun one to channel. Um the one that is most recent for me as far as channeling goes, as far as deity goes, is Anubis. And he is very interesting because he doesn't like to use words to talk. He likes to show me things more than actual, like, true, like, sentence communication. He'll like to show me kind of what he's wanting me to see or do or whatever. And it may almost be, and in some regards, it's almost like looking into a past life memory of me working with him. And it's like, I want you to do this, but I want you to do it in this life, kind of thing.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cryptic.
It
Are
is
you getting
very
like
cryptic.
I think it's to expect with Anubis. So
Yeah, he's a cryptic one. And uh whatever he ends up wanting to do, because doing death work and stuff like that, he's very big into, the one that's kind of leading the charge with that. Um and so he'll send, messages of, hey, this needs to be worked with, or hey, this spirit is going to come through, I'm sending them to you, need to do this X, Y, and Z. And it'll be, a statement of, hey, I'm going to send X, Y, and Z spirit to you, and then it's imagery of, you need to do this with them.
oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And did you always work with Anubis or you have other
Anubis was a stalker
spirit?
for a while. And I say
Okay.
that lovingly with the Anubis. Honestly, Anubis came through probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And I was like, do you really want to work with me? Like, don't get me wrong, I have a huge interest in working with like Anubis and, ancient Egyptian stuff and like the Egyptian deities. Like, I have a huge interest in it. But I didn't have enough interest to really dive deep and learn about it. Like, I was interested in it, I was fascinated with it. If any of it came up, I'd be like, ooh, what is that kind of thing? But it was never enough for me to go in like the academic kind of route and go do heavy research into it. And so Anubis started coming through a while back. And when he'd come through, I'm like, can I help you? What do you need? Like, why are you here? And he would kind of give me this nudge, like, I kind of want to work with you. And I'm like, first of all, I've already got like 6 to 80s I'm working with. I don't know if I reasonably have the time to work with you. So you're gonna have to be aware of that. And I don't know if I really want to work with you because I know what you're all about, and I don't know if I want to go down the death work road. I don't know if that's what I really want to do. Like, I'm open to the psychic work, I'm open to the deity work, but I don't know if I really want to go down death work roads. And so, he was patient, like very patient. But he kept pushing that button, like, hey, I really still want to do this. Time has passed. You up for it yet? And it's like, nope, not yet. Not yet. And then couple of months, I don't know, it was probably 3, 4 months ago. Um, I finally was just like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. Let's do this. I accept. And he's like, cool. Since you're already a priestess of Loki and the Morgan, I want that job as well. I want you to be one of my priestesses. Sir, I just
Oh,
started working with you. Can we at least get past introductions? And he's like, we've been introduced for like 5 years. And it was a crash course in working with Anubis in like 2 months flat. Like, as soon as I said yes, he's like zooms in, does all the stuff. It was probably every time I would do like a meditation, he would immediately kind of come in and be like, hey, I want to talk. Can I hijack your meditation so we can talk. And of course, I would say yes. And it was just crash course Anubis. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, fastest deity introductions I've probably ever had with any of my deities.
That's intriguing. I love how the deities and spirits, they just have this unique way to present themselves and to start working with you. There was one time, or they sometimes they just pop. Like I do that work. It's funny because me, it's the reverse. What brought me to channeling, to the witchcraft, to everything, was actually spirit work, because
Mm-hmm.
my I started meditating and I started having a lot of problems with just seeing spirits, interacting with spirits, and don't know what it was just happening to me. And then I felt lost. And so what my first thing that I wanted to learn was about death work and psychopomp work, um, to to be more in charge
Mm-hmm.
with that. And yeah, so sorry, I didn't I lost my 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 train of thought here.
You were talking about
Mm.
how that you came into working with some deities and with psychopomp work and everything else, and that's how some of them came through for you.
Yes, because yeah, I found that interesting that you know how they show it to you,
Mm-hmm.
how he presents himself. And so in my psychopomp journey, or that work journey, um I'm working with this a specific spirit. um and so I I had a weird journey where um I was there with my guide, and we had a I don't know how to put it, like someone that didn't know to choose whether they were Christian or if they were Norse. So it was someone from a certain era. And so it was kind of deciding which way it would go. And then from the sky, there was this big man with like long white beard, and he's all like shiny, and he's kind of walking slowly down the air as if he's going down the stairs, but without stairs. And it's just so funny to just watch him coming down, like taking his time, like he's a big shot. And and then I'm like, who are you? And then he's like, I'm Odin. And pretty much he's just sell he was just there to sign up the guy for coming with him instead of the Christian god. And it was like, what?
That
Anyway, I
sounds
witnessed that.
so on brand for Odin.
And I'm like, I didn't even know that Odin was doing psychopomp at the time. And then I learned that. I was like, what? And I said it makes so much sense because of like the Valhalla, but it didn't ring in my head. I
Hmm.
thought it was like the Christian god, because he looked like the Christian god. It was like the same kind of,
That's so funny. I think
yeah.
probably the most annoying and interesting like spirit that we had to move on. We ended up with a group of spirits with our coven that we were trying to help. And one spirit was this little old Christian lady. And she very much wanted to go to heaven and do her thing. Well, so we're like, okay, let's see how we can help move her on, because like she shouldn't be here. She wants to move on, but she was kind of stuck and she couldn't figure it out. And I had to administer Christian last rites to this woman that I didn't know how to do. I had to Google it in order for her to be like, I have to be forgiven. I have to be forgiven. And we're like, okay, we'll do this. I don't know how this is going to work, but if you will move on, we will do this. And eventually she moved on, but it was we ended up having to do last rites on her and pray with her, and she wanted us all to commit to Bible study. It was so funny.
Oh, that's so interesting. They know how to keep us busy, don't they?
She was
Oh.
so strange, and it was just like, I don't, and we all got done. We're like, did we really just give last rites to a spirit? And we're like, yeah, we did. That was weird.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, and what I like when you start to do that work, psychopomp work, is the evolution of my relationship to death and therefore
Mm-hmm.
to life. And I just want to kind of prepare in my life, live in a way that I'm ready to die, if it makes sense.
Yes. You
Yeah.
get very comfortable with kind of the idea of death and how it looks, and kind of um you understand it from a different perspective. You can see both sides of it. Not just the side where, people like, you don't want to leave your family and all that other stuff, but the other side of it you can see as well, where you end up seeing how death affects you when you cross over, when your soul leaves your body, kind of thing. And you get to see that kind of dual sidedness of it, and it's fascinating. And in the beginning of when I first started death work, it freaked me out because, somebody who's chronically ill, it's like you already have a very familiar concept of death because you're chronically ill, and so you get that. But at the same time, when you start to see the other side of it too, you're just like, oh, well, that's how that looks. And it's like, well, I understand it. And you also kind of understand how some spirits get stuck and they don't want to move and they don't want to go where they're supposed to, or how they, or if they die of horrific things like COVID. I've dealt with a lot of COVID spirits, who didn't even realize they were dead. That was the interesting part. And, having to help them and figure out what to do with them. I ended up with a lot of COVID spirits stuck on my property, which was interesting. And so, trying to figure out how to help them was a real challenge, but eventually, I'm still working through some of them, because some of them just, they don't believe it. They don't. And until they're ready to accept things, there's not much you can really do. Um, but it's really fascinating. Uh, but I will say that we have talked for an hour and a half. It doesn't even feel like it. It feels like we've only been here for like 45 minutes. um, and all of that exciting things. So everybody who's listening, you're going to get a much longer episode than you normally would. But this has been super fun and super exciting to just chat with you both about this.
Yes, that was very entertaining, and I think we could have gone for so much
Oh my
longer.
God. I think
Like,
we could have gone for like 3 or 4 hours without even realizing. I just looked down at the clock and I was like, oh, it's already been an hour and a half. Holy crap.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
um,
sorry for talking your ear off.
oh, never apologize for talking my ear off. This is why you guys get to come back all the time and talk my ear off, because I love it. And I love essentially losing time with you.
It's time travel.
It is time travel. So where, obviously everybody can find you at the Spirit World Center, but what do you guys have going on with Spirit World Center that everybody can connect with?
Oh, well, we have a new line of courses coming out in our full spectrum spirit communication program, where we are basically teaching people how to combine really three pillars of spirit interaction, right? How people can work with mediumship, trance journeying, and spirit work to really create this kind of holistic, all-encompassing way of working with the other side. So we are launching our full line of courses very, very soon, probably this week. And other than that, they can check out the podcast, the Spirit World Center podcast, and they can find us on Instagram at underscore world underscore center. And they can also find us at our website, which is spiritworldcenter.com. And of course, Lava, you have your new website. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I'm starting a new project that is I call Numinous Creativity.
Oh, neat.
And Yeah, and the thing is, because I'm more in touch with my art again this year, and there's just so many things I want to explore. So I decided to, I want to create a group, online group, where we explore um, the spiritual and creativity all together. And so this is a place, where you can, we as a group we would have like online 3 hours per month online workshop where we do like a shamanic journey, and then we do a spirit-led art session. Then we share and we do a meditation to kind of close the workshop. And throughout every week, I want to also share more exploration that are available. And yeah, so that's my goal, to help people kind of connect with their full creative potential and move through their creative blockages with the help of their spirit guides and soul healing. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. That is super, super cool. I look forward to hearing all about that and seeing how it progresses in the future. I think that's going to be a very fun adventure for you. And I'm so happy that you're getting back in touch with your art. That's so awesome. Your art is beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much.
So everybody who's listening, all the links that to the Spirit World Center stuff will be in the show description. So go and check everything out. Make sure you follow them on social media and stay in contact with them. And if you're interested in the classes, make sure you sign up because they're awesome. Because Eric and Lova are awesome humans. And Eric and Lova, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait for you guys to come back and talk more with me because you guys are awesome.
Thanks so much for having us. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Well,
Thank
everybody,
you.
you're welcome. Everyone, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye, everyone.